welcome to edition 97, part 5 million of our Killa No Filla podcast with me, Rachel Fairburn and Kiri Pritchard-McLean. Just before we start, we'll do our usual disclaimer. This isn't hero worship. We do this podcast because we have a mutual interest in serial killers. As long as we are doing this podcast, it stops us from writing to them in prison.
And hopefully this stops... Well, this is the final episode, is the dream.
This has to end. We're in a new year.
Yeah.
It's 2023. The year is behind. We've gone into the year with the Manson family. This is not how I anticipated it.
No, not at all.
Excuse me.
Oh, you're right, love.
Yeah, I just had a quick sneeze there. I'm allergic to the Manson family.
You know when people say, like, a sneeze is like 1/5 of an orgasm?
Oh, yeah.
That's not like for like, is it?
No, I used to have a joke about this. What was the joke? It was, they say a sneeze is a fifth of an orgasm, which is why when I sleep with my boyfriend, I keep some pepper by the side of the bed.
Love it.
And just throw it in my face after we've had sex because I deserve something. Hey, do you know what I found out recently? I've got a very low resting heart rate. I've got the resting heart rate of an athlete.
Are you serious?
Seriously.
But you have the demeanour of someone who has a very high heart rate.
I know. This is it, isn't it? I'm so surprised by it.
Wow.
Very low resting heart rate.
How did you find that out?
I using a Fitbit app and doing a test.
Nice. Well done, mate.
I mean, it doesn't affect my life in any way, shape or form.
It affects mine because it means you're going to live for longer and we have to keep doing this fucking podcast.
I don't know if maybe I think there needs to be a representation in comedy of people with low resting heart rates. That's what I'm going to push for this year. But no, I was saying to you, like, anything that happens to your body involuntary, like sneezing, is never pleasant. I always find it quite panic-inducing because I just worry that snot's going to go everywhere.
Oh, really? I think the worst feeling is when you go to sneeze and you can't, and you're like looking at a light, trying to get yourself over the edge. Oh God!
Over the edge? It's really fucking irritating. That what's the other things? My knees click quite a lot. That's something that happens to me involuntarily. I was saying to you though, I've hurt my knee yet again because as a woman under 5 foot, the world is not built for me, and I constantly, if I'm not having to climb up things to reach, I'm banging into bedposts or tripping over things or stubbing my toe. And I've really hurt my knee. I've got an itchy scab.
Oh, itchy scabs, mate. The absolute
it's annoying, isn't it?
Worst. And we're not talking about people who are crossing the picket line at the moment, but they are the absolute worst.
Hey, here's something as well. What was I going to say to you then? So I'm doing dry January.
Oh yeah, shit. How's that going?
Great. And I have to say, before that, I hadn't drank. I had quite a few drinks on New Year's Eve because I was gigging. But other than that, I hadn't really been boozing a lot. Like, I didn't drink on Boxing Day. Christmas Eve, I didn't really drink. And the way I feel right now, I might never drink again.
Really?
Yeah. So I've been to the pub a few times. And I've been away for a few days. And I've been in the pub and I haven't
Little
drank.
J2O for Fabs.
Don't like J2O. You can keep them.
What'd you go for then?
Lime and soda. I don't really like Diet Coke or fizzy drinks like that. So I go for a lime and soda. And I hate to do this because it's one of my... back in my big old boozing days, I used to fucking hate people who'd order hot drinks in a pub. But unfortunately, this is the level that I'm at now.
Do you have a cup of tea?
I have a black coffee or a cup of tea. But I've sort of read a book. Alan Carr, not the comedian, the Stop Smoking guy.
Yes.
I also wrote a Stop Drinking book. And I read it, and I think it's Darren Browned me.
Really?
Yeah. I think it's worked.
Wow.
Although I have got to do a podcast this evening about... You've done that, the pub podcast with John Robbins.
Yes. Moon
so
under
I've got to
the
do
water,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. But I don't feel any... I don't feel any desire to drink. I don't feel... Yeah, the book, I don't know if it's worked.
Wow.
I feel calmer. I feel healthier. Mm-hmm. My sleep's amazing. I'm having some fucking weird dreams, though. But I've not smoked either.
Oh, really? Because you're not drinking?
No, not smoked. The last cigarette I had was, from what I remember, I think I bought some on New Year's Eve. And I think I had one. And I found them in my pocket and I left them in the hotel.
Incredible.
So, could be a new me. Maybe I'm going to become one of those awful... I mean, I was insufferable when I was drinking. I'm going to be even worse when I'm completely, like, healthy. But we'll find out.
Are you going to turn into those marathon people?
Well, I'm doing my half marathon again this year. Only because I just thought, well, I did it last year. I just feel like I want to do it again.
But you're not posting your routes or Strava times?
Oh, God, no. None of that shit. I mean, each to their own, but that's not my bag. If you want to go for a run, go for a run. But posting your... Listen, my phone's not got enough memory on it to be keeping all this crap. Listen, I need room for screenshots to bitch about.
When I am back in the old couch to 5K, have been since last year.
Oh, lovely.
And every time I finish the run, it's like, you've finished, and then it's like, do you want to share this information? And you're like, with who? Like...
Some people do care.
No, because also it shows you I don't want people knowing where I go for a run.
Yeah, see, that's the other thing that I think. You know, people post where they've been for a run. I do always think it's a bit weird that because people know where you.
Yeah,
but then again, I do think with comedy,
like, who wants to see where I've been unaccompanied and not able to hear? Like, everyone runs with fucking headphones in. Like, who wants to see where I'm easiest to abduct for 20 solid minutes?
I mean, I always think that, like, posting stuff about where you are. But then I think, well, we're comedians, like, it's listed where we are all the fucking time.
Yeah, but, like, you're in a venue, there's witnesses, do you know what I mean? Like, normally when you're out for a run, or certainly where I live anyway, I'm in bumblefuck nowhere on badly lit, if they're even lit roads, not being able to hear who's sneaking up behind me.
Yes. I think it's was it Nike? A while ago, it was Nike or Adidas or somebody brought out an advert a few months back. And it was a woman, I think she woke up at like 2 a.m. and she was like, I'm going to go for a run. There was loads of complaints about it because it was like, in what fucking world can a woman do that? and it's so sad because you should be able to do that.
Yeah.
Like, you should be able to wake up at 2 a.m, not be able to get back to sleep and go, do you know what, I'm going to go for a run. But you fucking can't, can you?
No. It's always really grim, and I think it can be illuminating for some men when... You know, every now and then on Twitter it'll be like, if men didn't exist for one day, what would you do? And loads of women are like, oh, I'd go for a run. I'd go for a run. Or you know, like, oh, I'd walk home from work on my own. And just all the things that you know, male violence affects all genders. But, like, all the things that as a woman are just shit because men like to murder us.
Would you know what my New Year's resolution is?
Murder more men?
Murder more men. No, it's... to tell a bloke when he's standing too close to me.
Oh, really?
I'm sick of it. It's like...
What a fucking great New Year's resolution.
Well, I'm fucking sick of it. You know, you're standing in a queue and it's like, sorry, do you live in my arse? Like, can you fuck off? Do you want to back off, mate? It's all the fucking time, you know. And I've noticed it so much. And then they'll just stand right in front of you about 3 inches away. It's like, piss off, mate. There's plenty of room in the world. Why do you want to stand in my, like, this area? Fuck off. And that is going to be my New Year's resolution to say to a bloke. Like, especially when you stood at a bar or something. Like, do you want to fuck off? Because you're breathing down my neck.
Can you please tell me when you first are able to enact this New Year's resolution?
Don't you worry, I'll fucking tell you. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, obviously, there's places like the Tube and stuff like that when it's busy that people can't help it. Mm-hmm. Like, fine. But, you know, stop walking so close behind me. There is plenty of room in the world... You don't need to be this close to me. And I'll tell women as well. More likely to get a punch off them, though. Anyway, Charles pissing Manson.
Yeah, still going.
So, last episode, they've committed the Tate murders and the LaBianca murders. Mm-hmm. Some people have been waiting to binge this, by the way, since...
Poor fuckers.
Well, I say that, but that's the decision you make. So, Charles Manson, all this has happened. Nobody's connecting the Manson family to these murders. They're not even in the sort of thought pattern of the police. And the police initially didn't even connect the Tate and LaBianca murders, despite the fact that they were very similar.
Yeah.
And done within 24 hours of each other. And the fact that there was, you know, things written in the victim's blood on the walls. How much more fucking connection do you need? So it actually took 4 months for them to connect Charles Manson and his family to these murders. So by this point, Linda Kasabian has hidden the LaBianca wallet in a petrol station. And then on the 16th of August 1969, the Span Ranch, where they're all living, was raided. But it was raided to do with car theft and burglary. So again, it was nothing to do with the murders. They had no clue that this band of hippies was anything to do with these murders. Now, in the interim, we should say, there's still the first murder that we know of in July 1969. They're still investigating Gary, is it Hinman?
Hinman, yeah.
Yeah, they're still investigating Gary Hinman's murder, the police. So that's very much still an open investigation that they're, and again, not connected to the Manson family.
To the point where they have a LaBianca task force and they have a Tate Polanski task force, and they don't work together at all.
I don't even know what to say about that, so I'm going to say nothing. So, the Span Ranch is raided. Several members are arrested. Now, when the members are then released, they decide, do you know what, we can't get any peace at this Span Ranch anymore. We just can't get any peace. We're going to have to go somewhere else. So they relocate to the Barker Ranch in Death Valley. I mean, a more desolate place that I cannot imagine going to. I mean, imagine being in the Manson family and then going to live in Death Valley. I mean, they smell bad enough as it is. The fucking heat in Death Valley is going to exacerbate that. Now, in October of 1969, they're raided again in Death Valley. Now, Manson and 22 members of the family were arrested. Now, they were arrested because they were stealing RV equipment. What's that? Like music stuff?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So this is what it was. It was for theft. It was nothing to do with murders. Now, several children from the family were actually taken into the care of the authorities during this raid, and several of these children were actually adopted out. So as they think some of these children were probably Charles Manson's kids as well, because of all the free love that was going on. I can't imagine. I mean, all this crap that's going on there, and there's kids around. It gives me the creeps. It makes me feel a bit sick. Now, as the police are raiding the ranch, a woman comes up to them, Kitty, and she's like, "I really need your help. Please, can you help me?" And she's decided she can't get out of the Manson cult. She's trapped. She can't get out of it. Now, she was a girlfriend of what was the chap who killed Gary?
Was it Bigelow? How do you pronounce his
Yes,
name?
that's the guy.
I can't say his surname, but
I tell you what, I can't wait for someone to just come and contact us to tell us how to pronounce something.
Bigliosi.
Yes. I get it, like, about pronunciation, but sometimes I do think, come on, give us a fucking break, do you know what I mean? if I pulled up an American every time fucking Leicester was mispronounced or, you know, something like that, chill out.
I listened to something the other day, and it was an English person, and they were talking about rill, and you don't have to pronounce it like I do, but they were calling it real, and I didn't know what they were on about for ages.
Is people... Sorry, that's just fucking stupidity. If you're from the same fucking island...
Yeah. Mind you, Loughborough, who fucking knows? Who, if you'd only ever seen that written down.
Hey, Loughborough.
Chris Stokes has got a great
Leicester.
joke about that. Someone who knows pronouncing it Luga Bruga.
I actually went through Loughborough the other day. I'll tell you what, where Tim, my boyfriend, where his family live, there are some places that... Because Lincolnshire's not really visited as a county, I don't think, and I think that's really bizarre because it's very historic and very interesting. And some of the place names that I'm like, come on, you're fucking taking the piss now. There's a place called, it's written Three Kingham. That's Threckingham. There's somewhere else that I'm just like, that is not... Like, I get it, but come on.
Yeah, because...
The best is when you go through Scotland, you know, sometimes if you've been gigging in Glasgow and you're staying in Edinburgh,
yeah,
and you take a long train, there's some places where you go, I feel like I've woken up in a dream. Oh, this cannot be a real place.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it with Welsh because we have a different alphabet, but with the English ones, I'm like, what alphabet are you working off? Because I can't make sense of this, and English is my first and only language. Do you know what I have this? This is so boring. There's a whiskey called. It looks like, so it's spelled AUCHEN.
AUCHEN.
TOSH.
Oh, I thought you'd finished then.
No, TOSHAN.
Okay.
So, I mean, if it was Welsh, it'd be like Alchentosan, Toshan, probably. Have you... And it's pronounced Auchentoshan.
Oh, fucking hell.
It's mad. I don't know how you're meant to possibly get the clues from this. Everyone talks about Welsh being a hard language. I swear to God, English, I bet, is the fucking hardest second language to learn.
Oh, I mean, the fact that we have words that are the same but then pronounced differently depending on the...
Yeah.
You know, situation. Like, I couldn't even be asked to... I mean, I'm pretty sure I speak my own language badly.
My grammar's wank. Absolutely wank.
But I'm very... this trips me up quite a lot. I'm very much one of those people that will read a word, find out the meaning, and then mispronounce it.
Yes.
You know, that's quite common. I do that quite a lot.
Which, of course, you're not meant to shame people for, which I think I used to accidentally do when I was younger. I'd be like, it's pronounced like this. But it's only because I'm always so worried that everyone's going to find out that I'm stupid. And I think stuff like that is... I've always felt like I've had this intellectual paranoia that that's a giveaway. So me going to other people is being like, you're probably really embarrassed about that. This is how you say this. But you should never shame people because it means that they discovered the word through reading, right?
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Yeah, I that happens to me quite a lot. Sometimes if I do check, you know, I do a little Google thing and I check the pronunciation, but then a lot of the time it's an American doing a pronunciation and I'm like, I can't trust this. I don't need to trust anymore. Anyway, where were we? I can't even remember how we got onto this. The children, that's it. So Kitty is like saying to the police, do you know what? I need to get out of this. This is not a good environment to be in. I've got information for you. There's been murders. So she's telling the police this, and it must have been such a relief for her to be able to get out of it. Now, Kitty was 5 months pregnant at this point, so it's Bobby Beausoleil, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's it. So she tells the police that Bobby Beausoleil and Susan Atkins had been sent to kill someone, which, of course, was Gary Hinman.
Mm-hmm.
Susan was questioned about this. She at this point is in prison as well.
Yeah.
Susan's in prison.
She'd also been blabbing to her... She'd also been blabbing to her... I just laughed because I remembered that when they arrested them, Charles Manson was dressed entirely in buckskins.
For fuck's sake.
Susan had been mouthing off to her cellmate. So
yeah, she can't shut up.
No. So on November 6th, which is my birthday, she gives a big confession to Virginia Graham, who she's sharing a cell with. And she talks about this beautiful cat who is named Charles Manson.
Oh my fucking God, get a life.
But she goes into huge detail about Sharon Tate, what she was dressed like when they first went into the house, what she had begged for mercy with, the fact she had tasted Sharon's blood.
Oh.
And there's all the way through this, there's zero remorse as well. Obviously, jailhouse snitches are always a bit of a shaky ground, but we do know that this is true. She also talked about, with Virginia, she said that there were plans for other people. There was a list of people on their hit list, including, I'm so glad they didn't get to any of these, Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton, Tom Jones, what's your problem with Welsh people, you bunch of cunts, Steve McQueen, and Frank Sinatra.
Fuck off.
Yeah. So basically there's...
Oh my God.
It's absolutely mad. So Virginia Graham's like, oh, holy shit, this is quite bad and probably leverage for me. So she contacts a friend and says, listen, I think this person is part of a gang who've murdered, these high-profile murders, and it makes its way to the LAPD.
Well, Atkins as well says that she talks about the Tate murder, and she says, we want you to do a crime that would shock the world and shock people into taking notice as well. And she actually says, I would do anything that Charles Manson told me to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fucking sheep.
The La Bianca task force, because they are separate task forces, are like, don't know where to start. So one of the things they do is they go and speak to Al Springer, who is a member of that biker group, Straight Satan.
Yes.
Now, they are aware of Charles Manson because he tried to recruit the members of the bikers into their gang. And there was sort of rumours going around that these bikers didn't do the murder, but they might know who was responsible for it because they know someone who'd done a very similar murder. And so Al Springer said, well, Charles Manson came here and was bragging about having, quote, knocked off 5 people And he was like, come and join my gang, because he was like, I've got like 18 naked girls who can do whatever you want. You know, like I'm knocking off anyone who gets in my way, all this kind of stuff.
Oh my, I cannot tell you how much I hate him.
Why is it funnier that he's like, when I imagine this, he's like knee high?
I know. Do you know what? I imagine him, tiny little man dressed in double denim for some reason.
yeah, same.
Do you know what I mean? And I just have a... Out of all the episodes we've done and all the murders, I think this is one of my worst, you know.
Yeah,
because I hate everything about it.
No one's got any redeemable qualities, have they?
No.
The fact that like Roman Polanski, big old peed, is somewhere near a hero in this story is unbelievable. Like that big old paedophile is a wronged party is absolutely incredible.
A fucking rapist.
Yeah.
That's what he is. He's a fucking rapist, you know?
Yeah.
The whole thing is just awful. I hate it.
Now, Al Springer is chatting away to these detectives, and then he said, oh yeah, that he was saying that he killed these people, and he wrote something on the fridge in blood. I don't know, something about pigs. And they were like, oh, this rings a bell. But then they were like, but then why would this guy who doesn't really know this other biker guy very well just wander up to him and start confessing a load of murders? So they thought it was bullshit, and that they were trying to sort of move the attention to a rival gang. But then another member of the gang, Danny DiCarlo, starts basically saying the similar stuff. So they interviewed Danny DiCarlo, and he was like, oh yeah, it was one of the girls in the Manson family who was bragging one day to him, you know, we got 5 piggies.
Uh-huh.
And then piggies is obviously this word that keeps coming up. And then Charles Manson had done... How often does this fucking catch people out? Charles Manson had said, hey, Danny, how do you decompose a body?
Oh, God. Do you know... the list of... We should compile a list of the amount of people that have done this. I mean, it's such a... Hey, just thinking about this.
I got you.
So, hang on a sec. If you were going to get rid of a body, I'm not saying you're going to, how would you get rid of it? What's the best way to decompose? Is it quick lime? That's it, thank you.
Do you think this podcast does mean that fewer serial killers will be caught because they listen to this and they learn all the ways you can decompose a body anyway?
Oh, absolutely. Either that or they've just learned some new swear words. I think that might be more of what's happened. The whole thing about this is so fucking complicated. I mean, it's so complicated for something that is so simple. I mean, I don't know why the police didn't connect these two murders.
Yes.
Unless you had that thing where it was two task forces going, I want to solve this before them.
I think it might have been a bit of that. Now, there's all these sort of rumours going around. And in about this time, about 2 weeks later, the DA selects a guy called Vincent Bugliosi to be the chief prosecutor in these cases. And he is very well thought of. And he has won basically he's done like 104 trials. And he's got convictions in 103. So
that's all right. Fucking hell.
Yeah, he's very good. But I
bet that one really bugs him.
Yeah, it really pisses him off, you can tell. But he gets assigned this Tate LaBianca assignment, and he is very hands-on. That's one of the reasons why he does so well. So when they're like, okay, we've got a warrant for the Span movie ranch, he's like, I'm fucking coming with you. And he helps search the ranch.
Ooh.
So they go there and they find loads of bullets and shell casings. And it turns out that the family had been doing target practice. So there was all these shells and casings everywhere that obviously they could check against other weapons from other crime scenes. But yeah, there was definitely proof that they had been trying to improve their aim. And then they moved on to the other ranch it was the Barker Ranch. So that was the one at the edge of the Death Valley.
That's in Death Valley.
Yeah, and then this is where Vincent Bugliosi is searching, and he finds Charles Manson, who is so petite, he's hidden in a cabinet under the sink.
Oh, fuck off. Fuck off. Seriously.
Well, sorry, roll back a bit. So this is where they had been raided in October, and that is where he was found. So, but he couldn't believe, apparently, how small the cabinet was. So Vincent Pugliese goes to look at this cabinet. So basically there's a tiny... the cupboard under a sink, he manages to fit in there. So that gives you an idea of how small Charles Manson was, because you're very petite, and I don't back that you could get in a cupboard under a sink.
I don't think I could, no.
Next time we're together at your house, we'll try it and film it.
I'll try it. I mean, unless I was hiding from something, yeah. But I don't think I could. I've definitely mentioned this before. I've told you 2 stories here that have just reminded me. I've told you about my mum telling me about my great uncle Charlie, haven't I?
No.
So this was my gran's brother, right? So a very, So when I was a kid, I used to ring my gran up, my great uncle Charlie, and he'd obviously chat with her. Now, on the phone, my mum told me when I was a kid that my great-uncle Charlie was a tiny little man who lived in a matchbox, and his wife had to bring him out of the matchbox to talk to my grandma, and what he had to do was, he'd hear at one end of the phone and then run to the other end to speak, right? And I believed this for too long, and it turns out he was 6'7". A lie had been told. But one of my earliest memories is, and I've got a picture of me just before this incident. I was probably about 3, and there's a picture of me at my Uncle Brian's wedding. And my head was too big for my body when I was 3, but that's another story. So my 2 cousins by marriage locked me in a cupboard at this wedding.
What?
And took great glee in putting me in it. I mean, bear in mind I was a very shy child, and they were older than me. They put me in this cupboard and I couldn't get out. I was in there for ages. And I was so frightened. I pissed myself.
Oh.
And then I remember my grandma opening the cupboard, and I was like, oh, so relieved that somebody had... It felt like I was in there for hours and hours. And then it was like, it was just... That's one of my very first memories. So so being locked in a cupboard, I don't think is one of my preferred things to do.
Mate, that's awful.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't see them anymore now. They got divorced a few years ago. And fucking hot. But also, when I think back, so I was about 3. Those kids were probably about 8. Too old to be doing that to a little kid.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't you think? But I'll post a picture of me at this wedding as a 3-year-old child. The distress on my face before any of this has even happened.
At a social
I clearly
event.
do not want to be there.
Maybe they thought you were doing you a favour.
Do you know what? Actually, now, if I had to go to someone's wedding and someone said, I'm just going to lock you in this cupboard for 3 hours, I'd go, fucking brilliant, thank you very much. Come and get me out for the speeches and then I can go.
Have we talked about, with the Tate murder, that William Garretson, the caretaker, the groundskeeper, was a suspect? Have we talked about that? I don't think we have.
Oh, yeah, we mentioned that. The poor guy who'd not done anything.
What's very interesting is he is obviously interviewed and he's let go. He's the first suspect, and so he's arrested immediately, and he's let go sort of the middle of August because he did a polygraph test, and he said, no, I wasn't at the crime, I've got no idea, I was playing my music too loud. No, we now know polygraph tests are absolute bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And also, years and years later, he does an interview on a television programme, and he says, oh, I lied and I managed to pass the polygraph test even though I was lying. I did see some of the murders, I did see some of the sort of attacks that night, but he just didn't want to be a part of it because what was happening, and he might not even have known that at the time, is that the Manson family members were intimidating, attacking, coercing anyone who was a witness. So he probably just thought, you know what, I've seen shit. It's not going to help anything. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut.
Okay.
What do you think to that? Is that...
I honestly... I don't know what to think about any of this. To be honest with you, I'd have just kept it to myself. Why mention it years later? Attention seeker.
What, you would have taken it to the grave?
Yeah, just fucking shut up now.
Wouldn't that have eaten you away, though?
Maybe, I don't know. But also, I wouldn't find myself in this situation, so it's very difficult for me to be sort of hypothetical about what I'd do. Yeah, I mean, it's not helping anyone, is it? Keep your gob shut. Go to confession.
Mind you, when they did the polygraph test, they basically said it came back that he was clean for not taking part in it, but when it came to having heard anything, it was like inconclusive. And it was in 1999. He did he was part of a program that was on, you know, that channel E with like an exclamation mark after it.
Oh yeah, entertainment.
Yeah, entertainment. He was on an interview.
True Hollywood story.
Yeah. So that many years later, 1999, he says, "Yeah, no, I did see and heard what was going on."
I mean, maybe there's that thing of like in your own mind, you'd rather lie to yourself because it's probably not a nice. It's not a nice thing to hear. Or maybe it's that thing where you're getting on in life and you just think, I want this weight off my shoulders.
Yeah, it's just I think I would do something daft like that, you know, like lie and then be like, oh fuck, I'm in it now.
Do you think?
Yeah, I just see myself doing something stupid like that.
I don't know. I just have to be completely like, yeah, blunt about everything. I don't think I could fib. If I started to try fibbing, I'd go, oh, all right, you got me.
I'm so worried that I can't, like, people I love, I can't really lie to. It lasts seconds before I have to be like, I don't know why I just said that, I lied. But I think I've got it in me to be a fucking brilliant liar.
Do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know what I hate? This is a real pet hate of mine. So when you have like little arguments with like siblings or whatever, and like, oh, your mum, and it's not like a serious argument, it's just like a jokey argument, and you're telling the truth and you start laughing. Do you know what I mean? When you go, no, that's... And then you start laughing and then
you
go,
undermine yourself, yeah.
Yeah, and you go, no, I'm telling the truth. That is one of my, like... I fucking hate that. And it makes you go weak, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're like, no, I've got no power now because I've laughed.
I've lost the small amount of ground that I had, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, no, I'm telling the truth. And then every limb goes so weak that you're like, oh, I've lost.
We should go back to Susan Atkins, sorry. Oh, no, where are we from your side?
Oh, I was up to Kitty Lutzinger.
Yes.
Who told the police about Bobby Beausoleil and Susan. And she said that, yes, they were sent to kill somebody. And then Susan Atkins is questioned. Mm-hmm. And then she says to the police something about stabbing a man in the leg. And from the information that she gives them, they're like, hang on a minute. This is to do with the Tate LaBianca murders because that's something that happened that only she would know.
Yes. She also says at one point that she's in love with the reflection of Charles Manson. And I think that's a really interesting choice of words because what she's saying there, right, is that she doesn't really love the man, but she's like in love with the idea. That's what I take from that.
To be honest, I don't know what she means. I have very little time for these people. I don't think that she's as deep as she thinks she is.
Interesting.
They're all so full of themselves. Like, I mean, I just hate them all.
Now, they knew that for this trial they would need someone who was at the murders to give a statement. Now, they had sort of, from everyone's statements, whittled it down and figured out that it was, right, okay, there's 5 people who were in these Tate and LaBianca murders. We've got Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, Liz Van Houten, Linda Kasabian, and Tex. Mm-hmm. So they question them all separately. I mean, and not just in separate places. Locations. Because they've been caught in different places. Leslie Van Houten is questioned in California. Tex is arrested by a local sheriff back in Texas. Patricia Krenwinkel was in Alabama when she was arrested. Wow. And Linda Kasabian handed herself in New Hampshire. So they're all over the fucking shop. Yeah. Susan is in custody. And the DA are like, we think Susan might be the one because she's the one who's chatted the most shit out loud anyway. So they basically go and say, do you reckon we could do a plea deal for her in that we won't go for the death penalty, but she has to testify in front of a grand jury. Mm-hmm. And the more she cooperates, the more we might be generous with the offer that we give her. So she goes before this grand jury. It's December the 5th. And this is when she sort of monologues about Charles Manson and how sort of intoxicating he was and that she would do anything for him. And then they ask her about the murders. And she completely, in a very flat, monotone voice with no sort of, no remorse, no emotion, she just sort of describes the murder of Sharon Tate and everyone else at her house as if she's sort of talking about going on a school trip.
Wow.
So she It gives lots and lots of details that only anyone present at the murder would know. As she describes the murders, who they murdered in what order, which is why we have so much information about it. It says, oh yeah, we stopped here in the car, we washed off all our clothes here with a garden hose, we did this. She talks about how Charles Manson reacted when they came back, which was, he was cross that they had made such a mess. And then she said, when she returned to the Span Ranch, she said she, quote, felt dead. And then she said, you know what, I feel dead now. So 20 minutes chat goes on and they decide, okay, we've got enough to indict Charles Manson, Tex, Patricia Krenwinkel, her and Linda Kasabian and Van Houten for murder. Now, there's a very fucking weird thing going on. Tex is in Texas, and then there's something very weird going on with basically local politics. You know how Texas, anyway, from my understanding, is sort of a state that likes to do its own thing?
Yes.
Because Tex was involved in some sort of like local politics about whether he could be extradited from the state and all that kind of stuff. The DA were like, you know what, well, we're just going to proceed with everyone but Tex. So there's a point where they think that Tex might... They're certainly kicking the can down the road, but he's the only one who's not being held on trial for murder because of some like small town bullshit politics, which is mad, isn't it?
Oh, it just gets more fucking annoying. The entire thing's so annoying.
Oh, well, you're going to get really annoyed by this, is that Charles wants to represent himself.
Fox, of course he does.
Yeah.
Doesn't he get told no, though?
Yes, they meet him and they're like, no, like, for your sake, absolutely not.
First of all, they won't be able to see you.
So the guy who's the judge is called Charles Older, so Justice Older. And he says, Charles comes up to him and says, Charles Manson comes up to him and says, yeah, I would like to speak to the jury. And they said, okay,
oh, fuck off.
What do you want to speak to them about? And he says, this is a quote, I want to ask them a few childlike questions that are real to me in my reality. And they said, absolutely fucking not. What are you on about? So, like, he just...
Your reality, mate, is not coming into this reality. This is the real world.
It's mad how he conducts himself in this trial. The trial begins on June 15th, 1970. Also, Linda Kasabian, because she wasn't directly involved in the murders, does become a big witness. Although there's a lot she doesn't see. Now, Charles Manson also decides that one of the things he wants to do is to stare out the judge. So for the first day, he just completely stares at him. Is just sat there staring at him. And then the next day, he moves to Bugliosi, you know, the prosecutor.
Yeah.
And there's a recess in the court. And Bugliosi goes up to Charles Manson. He says, what are you trembling about, Charlie? Because apparently he's just like sat there staring, shaking. And he says, are you afraid of me? And Charles Manson goes, Bugliosi, you think I'm bad, and I'm not. And then he said, Charles Manson accuses Susan Atkinson. He says, she's a stupid little bitch and she just wants attention. And that's why she's told this story.
Says you?
Yeah, isn't that fucking mad?
Fucking little nerd.
So he's just behaving in a really bizarre way. The judge had originally said, yeah, you can be your own attorney, but then there was too much, and I quote, outlandish and nonsensical behaviour that they said, we're withdrawing your permission. You're not allowed to do it.
Fucking hell. I dread to think.
But you know what? That wasn't even the original judge. The original judge was William Keane, Justice William Keane. And he was the guy who was like, yeah, do you know what? You can represent yourself, that's fine. But because he'd been so mad, he'd been given a gag order, but he'd still just violated it. He carried on doing crazy stuff. And this is all in, like, pre-trial as well. They went, no, you're not having that. And then he went, all right, well, that's not fair. This judge is already against me. So they had to replace him, and that's when they ended up with a Judge Older who put up with him staring him out.
Fucking hell.
So testimony doesn't really begin until the end of July. And then Charles Manson rocks up. Do you know how his appearance changes?
Is it when he's tattooed the swastika on his head?
Well, swastika is part 2. The first one is an X. And it's freshly cut, as in there's blood coming from it. It's an X in the middle of his forehead. And he said, I have X'd myself from your world because you won't let me represent myself.
Oh, fucking hell. Shut up.
And then the women in the family saw that he did that and all followed suit and carved X's into their own foreheads.
Yeah, but how? With what? That's what I want to know.
I don't know. I reckon if you really want, you can find something. And
you probably should use your nail.
I was going to say your nail, yeah.
Yeah.
So eventually that goes on to be replaced by a swastika on Charles Manson's head. But the family all have these crosses now on their heads. You know what? So there's the ones on trial, and the others sort of set up camp outside for the whole of the trial. Women mainly sort of sat there. And do you know what's really fucked up about this is the families of the victims, the defence, as it subpoenaed them all. So that means that they potentially could call them all as witnesses, but that means that they weren't allowed in the court.
Oh.
And that's...
Oh, yeah.
It's because obviously they couldn't have anything that could prejudice the trial. But that means that, like, there was a really big presence of Manson family devotees, which weirdly increased as this sort of came into the press. And yet the families were just stuck in the corridors waiting, not allowed to be in the trial, not allowed to see justice, which I think is really fucked up.
Yeah, that's not great.
Because there was no way that the defence would call any of the families as witnesses. They just didn't want them there.
Fucking weird, innit? Yeah. Also, God knows what he would have behaved like.
But also, do you know what I think it is because if you're sat on the jury and you're sort of... I bet you get desensitised to all this when you're hearing about horrific crimes. But if you're sat there watching a mother crying, hearing about what happened to her fucking son when he just went to buy a stereo, it's very hard to not humanise the experience. And I think that's why the defence wants them out, is that they want to be able to, sort of play like mind games and, you know, make it all very factual and very clinical. And if you remove emotion from it, it's a easier case to make, I guess, about semantics and like legal. Well, technically they didn't do this, which means you can't prosecute them for that, and I think that's why they did it.
Interesting.
Yes,
that's a good theory.
Yeah, I just think it's quite sad though. Now there's a lot of chat about Helter Skelter in this.
Oh God.
And in fact, at one point, Charles Manson tries to blame the Beatles, and he was like,
"Oh, okay."
He's like, "I don't know why you're here. I don't know why I'm here, man. I'm not the one who wrote the music."
Is that what he says?
Yeah.
Fuck off, he says that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. If it wasn't so brutal, this would be hilarious.
Yeah. Now, Linda Kasabian is the principal witness. Now, there's other witnesses. She's given also, like, immunity. She's given basically a plea deal that, like, we can't arrest you or trial you for murder because of your testimony is really valuable. Now, when they bring Linda Kasabian to the stand, Bugliosi, the prosecutor, is like, just so you know, I'm going to give you the motive for these insane murders, but the motive is more insane than the actual murders. This is like, I'm going to give you a reason, but it's not going to be a good one.
Oh, God.
So, Manson's attorney gets a reputation for being, and has a reputation for being someone who's just like, objection, and they'll come up with all sorts of reasons. Their name is Irving Kanarek. And so when they said, right, okay, we're going to call Linda Kasabian, he was like, objection, this witness is incompetent and insane.
Oh. Why?
Well, had no reason, and the judge calls him to the desk and is like, you're being a fucking cunt right now, and you know this person's a witness, and your conduct is, and they call their conduct outrageous.
Oof.
Yeah. Now, this is, Linda Kasabian, obviously it's not ideal that she's involved in the family, but goes through quite an ordeal with this trial. She is on the stand for 18 days, and 7 of those days she's been cross-examined by Charles Manson's defence barrister.
Bloody hell.
That is a lot to go through for anyone.
Yeah. That is a lot, yeah.
She talks about the atmosphere in the family, and she was like, listen, whatever... he was like, you're expecting me to believe that a man just tells you to kill someone and you do it. And she was like, I don't know of any time during being in the family, she says, I don't know of anyone who ever refused anything that Charles wanted.
Wow.
And she says, we would always wanted to do anything and everything for him. Now, the prosecution says, listen, you saw all these murders. Why did you, you went back to the Span Ranch. What happened when you got there? Because up until now, Charles is saying, like, I didn't know anything about this. These people might have done it, but it was nothing to do with me. And if it was the music that made them do it, put the Beatles on trial.
Oh,
so
you fucking knobhead.
They needed to establish that Charles knew about it and was sort of actively involved. So this conversation basically takes place where Bugliosi says to Kasabian, right, when you went back to the Span Ranch, was there anyone there? And she says, yes. And he says, who? And she says, Charlie. So was there anyone else there? And she says, no, not that I know of. And she said, where was he when you got back? And she said, oh, he was in the same spot he was when we drove away. He was, like, still where he was when we left him. And she says, okay, what happened? And he said, well, there was some blood on the car that Sadie had seen when they were basically filling up at the gas station.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, okay, and then what happened next? He says, well, he said, go to the kitchen, get a sponge, wipe all the blood off. And he also said to Katie to go through the entire car. So this is a member of the family that's already at the ranch. Go through and wipe off all the blood spots, basically clean the evidence. And he says, what is the next thing that happened after Mr. Manson told you in case you to check out the car and remove the blood? He says, he told us to go into the bunk room and wait, which we did. So this is proof then that Charles knows about the murders, is involved in cleaning a bit of evidence / the crime scene. And she said, Linda Kasabian, they said, why did you go to the La Bianca's house knowing what happened at the Tates? And she said, I didn't want to, but because Charlie asked me, I was afraid to say no. Now, over all these, like, over 2 weeks of being in the witness stand, you think that she would sort of crumble, or that juries would not believe her, or think she was mad, or that she, that she would trip up. But apparently she was a fucking brilliant witness. And they tried to absolutely at every point make her look like a hippie who didn't know what the fuck was going on, like an absolute space cadet. So they're talking about, well, did you take LSD then? You know, because that alters what you can remember, it alters your mind. And she was like, yeah, about 50 times. And then he was
fucking
like,
hell.
But this is a really good bit of cross-examining. Charles Manson's attorney says, okay, well, you described to me what happened on trip number 23. And she was like, oh, I don't know. And he's like, okay, so you don't remember what happened. So how can you remember what happened on these things? How do we know that you weren't on LSD? Lots of people said that you took drugs when you did these murders, all that kind of stuff. And then sort of tried to debunk her, talking about all her sort of weirder beliefs, let's say, or less conventional. So she believed in ESP, and she said that she used to get vibrations from Charles Manson.
Okay.
And that... I know, it's not ideal, is it? And that's how she would sort of understand how urgent something was or what needed doing. And also she was very into witchcraft as well. Mm-hmm. So all this...
Yeah, none of this is particularly helpful at this point, is it?
No, it's not making her look more credible, but apparently she's so sort of consistent, and loads of people are doing LSD at that time, and loads of people are a bit hippie-ish. It doesn't actually seem that outlandish.
Yeah.
Now, Charles Manson cannot fucking help himself. On the August the 3rd, he stands up in court, and somehow he's got a copy of the LA Times, and on the front of it, it says, Manson guilty, Nixon declares. So this is a huge thing, obviously, that the president basically gave an interview, and quite obviously Nixon isn't quite hardline, says, we're wasting too much time when we're making a celebrity out of this man. He's clearly guilty, is sort of the gist of the article. So the fact that Charles Manson holds it up deliberately, saying that this headline is going to prejudice the jury, so we need a brand new jury, and I actually can't have an adequate defence because I've already got the President of the United States saying that I'm guilty, which I think is a fair fucking point.
Right, for once, I think that's a fair point, but I'll be honest, you fucked Charles. You've done it. You can get all the juries you want in.
Well, but the judge is inclined to agree with you, because the judge is like, yeah, I tell you what, I don't think we're going to uphold that as a motion. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to get each juror, I love it when they do this, to swear under oath that he or her are not going to be influenced by what the president said. And they were like, we promise. Because imagine, if you'd been through all this as a jury, you would want to see it through to the end, right?
Absolutely.
So, yes.
Absolutely.
So they all promised that, like, we promise that we won't let the most powerful man in our country influence what we decide about
They decided already. They decided the minute they walked in.
Do you think?
Look, you see that little cunt sitting there staring everyone out? He's guilty as sin. Once you've heard Linda Kasabian, you're like, yeah, 100% this bloke's going to prison.
Interesting. Charles Manson is... he would use the phrase blackie throughout the trial, which is obviously... I mean, it's not a known racial slur to me, but that's not saying it's not a racial slur, but that's how he used to refer to black people. So
I mean, it's unpleasant.
Yes, it's not nice. And also coming from him with the context. So he basically admits during the trial that he's trying to make sort of a race war. That's one of the things that he admits to.
Fucking guy.
Which is not ideal for his defence attorney. Now, November the 16th, 1970, is 22 weeks of testimony.
Oh, God. I couldn't go through it. Do you know, it'd be my worst fucking nightmare, jury service. No, thank you.
Yeah, but mate, that's just the prosecution.
Oh, my God.
So the prosecution rests. They get 3 days off.
They need it.
3 days off. That's a bank holiday. And then the defence starts. And this is absolutely mad. So the courtroom is kind of full. And without calling a single witness, he just says the defence rests.
Oh.
Now, the 3 female defendants who are on trial, who aren't, Linda Kasabian, start going mad and they're screaming. They want to testify. The reason why is they thought... They basically were still massively influenced by Charles Manson, and he was... I don't know how this communication was happening, but they knew everything that he wanted. So there must be some communication going on from somewhere. So they were afraid that if they put them on the stand, they would go, yes, it was all our fault, Charles had nothing to do with it. Which, if you remember, is exactly what happened to Charles during his childhood. He would put women up to stuff, and they would take the blame for it.
Yes.
And he would get away with it scot-free, and he thought exactly the same thing was going to happen whilst he was doing this. Mm-hmm. It's fucking mad, right? Now, there's a documentary years later in sort of like the late 80s, and Patricia Krenwinkel says the entire proceedings were scripted by Charlie. So she admits to this being sort of all masterminded by him. He also shaves his head at one point. So he's got a shaved head now and a cross on his forehead. And the members of the family also shave their heads. But the ones outside the court, the women inside the court, keep their hair long. Do you know why they did that?
No.
It's because they were suddenly worried, if it looks like Charles has too much influence on us, they won't believe our story that he didn't influence us on the night of the murders.
God almighty, these fucking people.
Well, it's quite clever.
Is it?
I think it is, to, be playing chess to that level with the truth.
I mean, it's not any great fucking sort of thing. I just... self-absorbed, pseudo-intellectual bullshit. I can't... the lot of them.
Well, speaking of all that, Charles is about to testify. Now,
here we fucking go.
They don't trust him at all. So when he's like, right, I'm going to go to this... I'm on the stand now. And they were like, okay, get the jury out. And it's because there's a Supreme Court a ruling in California called the People versus Aranda, which is basically you can't make statements that implicate your co-defendants. You can only really talk about yourself. You can't be like, well, you want to ask that person about this. And they were like, there's no fucking way Charles Manson won't influence the jury and blame it all on the girls. Mm-hmm. So they kick the jury out. So it's just him. He talks non-stop for an hour.
Fucking the worst Edinburgh show. The worst Edinburgh show. To be honest, a perfect Edinburgh show. No laughs.
No laughs in an hour long by a man who thinks
bang
he's
on an hour.
Destined for greatness.
The Guardian love him.
Do you know what? I do think, though, that if you had been sort of accused of all these murders, an hour isn't a long time to talk.
Not really, no, considering what's gone on.
Yeah. So he says, during this stream of consciousness, this is where he says, the music is telling the youth to rise up against the establishment. And this is where he says, why did you blame it on me? I didn't write the music.
Well, here's something for you. Sort of music sometimes does tell youth to rise up against the establishment. It doesn't mean break into people's houses and fucking kill them.
No, apparently it was this hour, which is just meant to be talking about the murders, was full of digressions and fantasies.
What a review.
that you can read the full excerpt.
Once Manson learns to channel his train of thought, there could be a lot here to work with.
He comes out with mad shit. He's trying to he tries loads of different tacks. He says, he tries to blame the Beatles for it, obviously. And then he blames the system. He says, I have ate out of your garbage cans to stay out of jail. I've worn your second-hand clothes. I've done my best to get along in your world, and now you want to kill me. And look at you. And then I say to myself, you want to kill me? Ha! I'm already dead. Have been all my life. I spent 23 years in tombs that you built. So...
Right. Fine.
So he's just monologuing non-stop. And he's basically... What I sort of concluded earlier on in this fucking magnum opus of ours is that he's against the system of like capitalism. He can't work in that world, can't live in that world. You know, he'd been institutionalized. He's sort of rallying against that. And then every now and then says, the judge goes, okay, have you got anything else to say? And then he'll go, I didn't kill anyone, it wasn't my fault. It was if you were to say I'm guilty, I'm fine, I'm guilty. And then he'll be like, okay, right, you're going off the subject now. Do you want to talk about the actual trial? And then he goes on and on and on, and he's like, okay, anything else to say? And he's just sort of sitting there and letting him run out of steam.
Brilliant.
And then he gets cross-examined by Vincent Bugliosi, who's very good and just sort of like takes him apart, basically. Now, the main part of the trial is over, you'll be pleased to hear.
Yes! Thank fuck!
But weirdly, when we're coming to closing arguments, someone who represents Van Houten just goes on holiday.
Oh, brilliant. Now is not the time.
Yeah, he goes on holiday. Well, it was on a weekend trip. Is meant to come back. But Ronald Hughes, the attorney, goes missing. What? Yes. So, goes on holiday.
Is this a joke?
No, not at all.
Oh my fucking God, I didn't know about this.
Yeah, Van Houten's attorney goes on holiday, as you'd expect, once a long fucking weekend, but then just completely disappears. Now, obviously, there's no one to then summarise, so they bring in another attorney who's like, fucking hell, there's a lot of testimony here. Can I have 2 weeks to read everything? And then, because then I can't do a closing argument without it, and hopefully he'll be found in the meantime. So there's another 2-week delay. And that brings us to...
So what happened to this guy?
Well, we'll find out later.
Okay.
It sort of resumes and it's just before Christmas. Now,
oh, lovely.
At this point, the judge is completely sussed it. He's like, they're all acting together as one. There's collusion going on here. What we're seeing is... performance, it's not actual testimony, and the judge is sort of leading the jury to that as well. This is when we get to the conviction. It's the end of January when all of this comes in. So it's January 25th 1971, and the jury goes away, and there's 4 defendants, remember, because Tex is still just knocking around. There's 27 different counts against them, and the main crux of the defence was that those other murders were a copycat murder of Gary Hinman's murder. So they basically said, because Gary Hinman they thought was a drugs thing gone wrong, and they said what it was is they wanted to get Bobby, who was who'd been pinned for that murder, out of prison, and the only way you could do that was to fake other murders. And the person who came up with that idea was Bobby's girlfriend, and that is Linda Kasabian. So their whole defence is based on the fact that this is all lies from Linda Kasabian, who was the actual mastermind of things. It wasn't Charles Manson, and she wanted to get her boyfriend out of prison. So it's just fucking mad. Absolutely mad. Now, there's loads of different defences. The women blame it's Linda Kasabian because she's defending her ex-boyfriend and she arranged these copycat murders. Manson's defence was that it was actually the women who were doing it, and it was because they were all in love with Tex, who was the real mastermind of all this, and it's a shame that he wasn't the one on trial, because you would all find out when Tex was being, on trial, that it was actually him and not Charles Manson.
Okay, right, yeah, sure.
And then also his defence said, what you're actually persecuting him for is because he's got an alternative lifestyle and you squares don't like it.
Yeah, man.
Now, his closing argument lasts 7 days.
Fuck off.
Yeah. And at one point, the judge just goes, Judge Alder goes, you know what? This is no longer an argument. It's a filibuster.
Thank you. This judge is my fucking hero.
Yeah, he's good, isn't he? Don't fuck around. Now, when the prosecution, who, don't forget, has won most of his cases, does a summation, he is very brilliant. He describes, and I don't know this word, Charles Manson as the Mephistophelian guru.
Okay.
And what's Mephistophelian again?
So that's the demon from Faust.
Yes.
Like I imagine a manipulative demon. Having never read any of Faust, I assume that's what it is.
Well, also at this time, he had shaved his head, as you know, but he'd also fashioned his beard.
Oh, so cruelty. There we go. Just give it a quick do. It's sadism, cruelty, manipulation, spite.
Oh,
that's
great.
Mephistopheles, yeah.
Okay. Mephistopheles I only know from cats. But he'd also, at this time, Charles Manson had turned his beard into like a fork shape, like the devil.
Oh, fucking hell, mate.
Yes. Now, he says he was sent from the fires of hell at Span Ranch. 3 heartless, bloodthirsty robots, and unfortunately for him, 1 human being, the little hippie girl, Linda Kasabian. And he closes his summation with what he calls a roll call of the dead. And then he just reads out all the names of the people who were murdered. And he says, they're not here with us in this courtroom, but from their graves they cry out for justice.
When Tim plays sort of FIFA or any of these games that he plays on the PlayStation, when all his friends join the game, I call it the roll call of dweebs.
You fucking bully.
I like fucking roll call of dweebs going. So much so that Tim now refers to going to play this PlayStation as just going for a roll call.
Now, the jury do spend a week deliberating over it. So they come back January 25th, 1971.
I would have said longer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because there's a lot.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
A week.
Yeah, because there are so many different, what was it, like 27 or something like that. So they found all the defendants guilty on each count of first-degree murder.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're given more information on the penalty phase going, if you find them guilty, this is what we would do to them. So they're right, okay, we've got more evidence, and they sentenced them all to death.
Okay.
Yeah, on March 29th. And as the clerk read the verdict, Manson shouted, "You people have no authority over me."
I think they do, mate.
Patricia Krenwinkel shouts, "You have judged yourselves." And Susan Atkins says, "You better lock your doors and watch your own kids."
Ooh.
And Leslie Van Houten says, "The whole system is a game." It was a 9-month trial, and at the time it was the longest and most expensive in American history.
Fucking hell. Thank you for telling me about that. I couldn't have got through that myself.
Now, the day that the verdicts came in, a body was found, wedged between 2 boulders in Ventura County, and it was the decomposed body of Ronald Hughes, who was Leslie Van Houten's defence attorney.
Now, oh my God.
Yeah, it was never proven that he was murdered by the family, because they were acting as like the rest of the... Don't forget, there's fucking loads of them on the outside. They're sort of acting as enforcers, but everyone thinks that's what happened.
Wow.
Now, they're like, oh, he might have died in a flood. Years later, Sandra Good, who's one of the Manson family, says he was the first of the retaliation murders.
Yeah, it seems too much of a fucking coincidence, if you ask me.
Yeah. And they think it's because Leslie Van Houten was the first... He was the first one to say, she won't take the witness because I know she'll just defend Charles Manson. So, yeah, isn't that rough? Because also no one will ever be brought to justice over that.
Wow.
Isn't that fucked up?
Fucking hell.
Now,
they don't get executed, though.
No, but only because they're very fucking lucky. Because there's basically a change in the law in 1972. The California Supreme Court abolishes the death penalty.
Uh-huh.
And it's in California v. Anderson. So all of the death sentences get reduced to life in prison.
Wow.
But at one point it sort of comes back again. Isn't it Arnold Schwarzenegger something to do with this? Let me find the right bit.
I can't get my head around most of this, to be quite honest with you.
Really? As a court case?
It's just an entire thing that happened. It's completely bonkers.
Well, we've done over an hour, you know, and we still haven't talked about everything that happened afterwards.
Fucking hell. It's part 6, innit? This is what's going to happen.
Oh, God.
I think it could do with a part 6, because I think everything that's happened afterwards, I think we do need to discuss.
Yes. Because we haven't talked about Tex.
Haven't mentioned Tex, haven't mentioned where they are now.
Yeah. All the interviews that he gives, the marriages.
Yeah, which he shouldn't have been allowed to do, quite frankly.
No.
So it's going to be 6 fucking parts.
This is absolute bullshit.
Listen, part 6 will be with you soon. What I want to ask is if anyone's got any suggestions for a historical romp for after this.
We just want a feel-good murder, guys.
Just a feel-good murder, just something light, something, that we can all just enjoy because it was a couple of 100 years ago.
No rapes, no kids.
Yeah, please, just...
Can't we have a vigilante who kills rich people years ago?
Just something, suggest it. Something light-ish, after this. So that's part fucking 5 of the Manson.
Oh, my God.
I hate them so much. So that's part 5. Who suggested this? Can you believe we were going to do this as a live show?
Imagine. It'd be like a fucking piece of performance art. We'll do it. You know when Mark Watson does one of his 24-hour shows?
Oh, my God.
That's what we should do.
Do you know what it'd be like? It'd be like the fucking Mousetrap. Oh. So that's it. Thank you for listening. Any other business? Let me just say, I'm on tour from the 21st of this month. And I'm going to all the places that you would expect. Newcastle, Birmingham, Nottingham, Glasgow, Belfast, Harrogate, Blackburn. Don't know where that came in. But yeah, I'm on tour. Tickets are on sale. You know where to get them.
I've got one tour date left on the 23rd of January. It's got 11 tickets left.
I was going to say you've only got 11. I saw that this morning. You've only got 11 tickets left. That's good.
I'm really pleased, yeah.
That very last tour date.
That very fucking last tour date that I had to move.
Annoying that, isn't it?
It is. And I've saved some bum bags. So I'm allowed to sell them at the venue. Please bring biscuits if you are coming. And then that's it. You won't see me doing any fucking gigs for a year. Well, no. I do not. I'm working up my new show. So I'm popping it up in some slightly mediumly secret places. Doing one in Leicester. It's on my website, but I'm not shouting about it. I think that's nearly sold out now anyway. But yes, if you wanted to see what I'm cooking up,
excellent.
You can come and see that. Oh, well, do you know what we should say? This is the most amount of podcasts we've ever done in a year.
Is it really?
Yeah, we've done fucking loads. Because normally we try and do, obviously, I think when we first started, we'd be like, let's do one a week, which is fucking mad. And then obviously we were able to do far more in lockdown. But I actually think we've done more this year, I know we're into the next year after, than in any other previous year.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so, we hope that you like it. And thanks to the people on Patreon as well who, you basically, because we've been able to, the reason why we can do more is because we pay someone to edit it now.
Yes.
So it's quicker, and it means that we can commit to more because we've got more hours free to do the other stuff. And so, yeah, you guys pay for that with a Patreon, so thank you very much.
We do. We appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
So that's it. Part 6 is coming. Oh, God.
And our JFL's show, which is on...
Yes.
Oh, shit, I should...
March.
Go on.
The...
Early March.
Hold on. It is in early March, the first week of March. 4th of March.
7 p.m. That sold very well. Is looking very busy already. So if you want to come to that. And if you've got any... Oh, no, we know what we're doing for that live show, don't we?
Do we?
We can do...
Brilliant. Yes.
We'll beat that out. Beat that out.
Let's do that. That's a good one.
Imagine being our editor. Most of it is just cutting out me yawning and beeping things out. That's what the Patreon money goes on.
That's what it paid. Hey, there's a lot of yawning and coughing, so they're going to get carpal tunnel syndrome from pressing that delete button.
Do you know what? I feel really bad. Every time I put up an episode and I'll bang it on our Facebook page and I say, oh, God, there's another part or whatever. There's some lad, I think his name's Ian or something like that, who's a binger, who's holding out, and he's like, oh for fuck's sake, because I'm like, sorry, there's another part. And
we're so sorry.
When I looked at my clock and I saw it was over an hour, and I was like, oh, God, we're going to have to do another episode. I didn't think, shit, when are we going to do that? I thought, that fucking guy's going to have another go at me on Facebook.
We're so sorry. Yeah, we are so sorry. Because I have noticed these comments going, Not good for us bingers.
Yeah, that's him. That's the one.
This has been going on since last year now.
Poor guy. We're dragging this bullshit into the new year.
Yeah, we're so sorry. We're so sorry.
But, blwyddyn newydd dda, Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year. Speak to you soon.
Bye.